eNcase.
25 minutes to 8, Michael Keelan's weekend. If only you knew the conversations that happened during the news to try and just work out pronunciations. It is time to catch up with one of our favourite guests, great member of the family, Dr. Uwe Stroeher from Neutrog.
Uwe, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are we today?
Very well. Is it Bernice or Bernice?
I suppose with you, it's a Bernice. Or Bernice.
Burn. We've sent Bernice a message. Please call in and tell us how you say your name. Because we all think we're saying the same thing.
Well, my auntie Bern was B-E-R-N-I-C, Bernice.
Bernice.
Which means she who brings victory in Greek.
Very nice.
But B-U-R, I don't know. Still, Uwe, help us. Winter soil, nutrients and soil microbes. That's changed from Bernice.
Oh, I don't know why you're asking me. English not even my first language.
No. hang on. Just hold the press just before we get to Dr. Uwe. Bernice has come in. She said it's like furnace. With a B.
Bernice.
So it's Bernice.
Oh, Bernice. Oh, not Bernice. Bernice.
There you go.
Oh, no.
Sorry.
Winter soils, nutrients.
Come on, Uwe, let's go with
it.
You know, I guess we'll get to the subject matter at hand, I think. I guess, you know, we all look upon winter as being a period when there's not much happening in the garden. You know, a lot of people look out and go, oh, it's miserable, it's cold, my plants aren't doing anything, my soil's not doing anything. But in fact, it's still really active. So, you know, bacteria and fungi, they are still breaking things down. They're still active. And we've got to remember that the difference between a summer and winter soil temperature is probably only about 10 degrees. So you're losing about a half to about a third of the activity that bacteria and fungal normally display. So, but you've got the extra moisture in the soil. So, you know, bacteria and fungi love nothing more than a bit of moisture and a bit of warmth, as you pointed out today with the rose pruning, in regards to, you know, making sure it can dry off and callus over a little bit. So, you know, if it's moist, and they love that. So the bacteria and fungi are still working away. They're still cycling nutrients. So although it's a bit slower. So they're using that organic matter and they're still making it into a form that your plants can use. Because when you put down your organic matter, whether it's a pelletized compost or it's your compost or even your mulch, the organic matter in that material isn't something that plants can use straight away. So the bacteria and fungi break this down. So it makes it into that soluble format. Now what happens is if people then sort of say, oh, well, nothing is growing, I don't have to worry about it, over time you actually start to lose nutrients out of your soil because these things become soluble and volatile. So things like the nitrogen sources, they'll start to disappear into the atmosphere. Some of it will get washed away. Those micronutrients, things like iron and manganese and all these other things that are released from the organic matter that's breaking down, also get washed away. So what you should really be thinking about in winter is to put in winter vegetable crops, because what that does, that helps to trap those nutrients and the plants then take it up. And that's the reason why, for example, farmers put in a cover crop. They put in a cover crop for two reasons. One is, obviously, it reduces soil erosion, but the other thing is they're actually trapping nutrients so they're not lost. So that's really, really critical. So having that winter crop, whether it's a winter vegetable crop or even just growing something else, it's great to have, because that will stop the nutrients from being lost that the bacteria and fungi are making available to you. So, you know, at the end of winter, your soil can actually be nutritionally poorer than it was at the beginning of winter. So keep that in mind. So
that's if you don't do anything.
That's if you don't do anything. So, yeah. So, you know, because things are still growing, you should also still think about fertilising. I mean, if I go out in my garden now, and if you look around, you know, the wattles are starting to flower. They are, right. Your natives are putting out
almond
leaves.
trees.
Almond trees are flowering. It won't be long till, you know, some of the things like some of the early prunes and that sort of thing start to flower.
Yep.
So, and you have a look in my garden, my diosmas are growing and flowering. My lily pillies are growing. So all of these plants are still using and requiring nutrients. So to think that in winter you don't fertilise is actually a mistake, because what's happening now is those plants are now using reserves that they've stored in their roots. I mean, I guess a prime example would be your bulbs. Your bulbs pretty much store energy and nutrients in those bulbs, and they use them now. So what you need to do is you need to think, well, if they're using reserves, you need to replenish those. So, you know, if you're growing things like I grow, a variety of various bulbs that my wife loves, so things like irises and that sort of thing. And I always put some fertiliser on them now because simply you want to rejuvenate or top up those reserves. So, you can use something like sea mungus, which I use generally around the garden, or for bulbs and flowering plants, I use sudden impact for roses.
Yep.
So it's really critical that you think about that because, things like bulbs and that, they slow down and they start to, once the flowers are gone and everything, they really start to go back into their dormancy. So it's too late to think about it. So if you're using organic fertilisers, you always have to think a few weeks ahead of the game because they're not like a chemical fertiliser that's really readily soluble, within 2 days. Organic fertilisers take a few days, maybe a couple of weeks to start to break down. So if you feed now, your plants won't see a full hit of that for about 2 weeks. So it's really critical that you continue to think about fertilising over winter. So,
So that would help them break out of winter into spring, wouldn't it?
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
That's true, yeah. So, I think that the bottom line is that plants only got so much in the way of reserves. And if you don't top it up, then they will struggle, So, that's why I always say to people, you should be fertilising in winter. So in winter, you don't have to be as aggressive. Aggressive is probably the wrong term. You don't probably need to hit the plants with as much fertiliser as you do, say, in spring. But you should always be thinking, well, it's still biologically active. We're not in an area where we've got frosts that freeze the ground. We're not in Europe or even Alpine Australia where plants really do pretty much almost stop. I mean, they don't come out through the snow cover. They're effectively completely inert and asleep. But in South Australia, we've still got plenty of growth happening in winter. And so if plants are growing, they need to be fed. It's
well,
succulents,
simple. For example, are flowering now. So
in my zygote
same with
cactus
them,
is flowering now.
Yeah, beautiful.
Or Christmas cactus, depending on what you call it.
Yep.
Yeah, so... again, they're really good to feed. Give a little feed now they're finished flowering or in the flowering phase. For them, ideally you'd use something like strike back for orchids or something like that because that's designed for plants like succulents and orchids and that type of thing. They have a slightly different root system that's not quite as extensive. That's right, epiphytic. Yeah, so the epiphytic cacti particularly are very much like the orchids. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's a long-held belief by many people, many gardeners, just don't fertilise in winter. It's a waste of time and money, but it's not.
It's not. No, I mean...
It's not.
Think about your winterable vegetable crops. I mean, your spinach and your lettuce and your radishes, they're all growing like mad. They grow better now than they do later on in the year.
Yeah.
So what makes you think they don't require feeding? They require feeding at all stages as long as they're growing.
And things like, for example, asparagus, if you've got a bed of asparagus, help that push through.
Exactly.
Huey, as always, very interesting. So the products you're recommending, what, sea mungus, sudden impact for roses?
Yeah, sudden impact for roses, particularly if you're growing things like, bulbs.
Yes.
It's really, they're really, really, I mean, a lot of people do grow bulbs and, they put on spectacular blooms year in, year out.
Beautiful.
As long as you make sure that bulb has a chance to regenerate its nutrient and its energy source. Now, obviously, for the sugar that's stored in the bulb, that comes from the photosynthesis. So you don't really have to do anything there. That's, sunlight and off it goes. But the other nutrients like nitrogen and these other sort of things that need to be stored in the bulb, well, once the bulb's used them up, it won't give you the same flower the next year around if you're not topping up the tank.
Huey, for more information?
info@neutrog.com.au. This is probably the easiest, or just get onto our website and have a bit of a look.
And I saw Huey bought in a big gift today too to give away to our listeners.
A bucket of
sudden impact for roses.
Yeah.
Very good.
What's that, a 5 kg bucket?
4 kilos.
Yeah,
so that'll go a long way. I mean, you only use 100 grams per square metre, so that'll do a fair size.
Great.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that.
Nice.
Thank you, Huey. As always, very informative, and I think it's timely to just remind us that our plants do need feeding, even during our, what we think are cold winters. Seriously, it's pretty good when you think about it. Come on,
we don't really have cold winters. No. I remember standing at a railway station in Germany once, wearing jeans and long, what do they call it, thermal underpants, and long johns, and the wind was whistling and. I kid you not, it was freezing. It was like minus 20 degrees and the wind was blowing and then you think, well, this is cold.
Yeah, cold day in Adelaide's about 7.
That's right. We don't know how well we've got it here.
I mean, the mornings are cold, but a day. Yeah. When did we have 7 last, or 8? I just think very rarely. No. In winter.
It's been a while.
Might get down to 10, 11.
Yep. Have the occasional overnight low, but nothing through the main.
No.
Dr. Uwe, thank you so much again for coming in. If you'd like to get your hands on the sudden impact for roses, all you've got to do, ask us a gardening question between now and 10 o'clock, 8223 0000, and of course, all Neutrog biological fertilisers are available at every good hardware and garden store.
Garden looking a bit drab? Rejuvenate it with Sea Mungus from Neutrog. Jam-packed full of goodness, Sea Mungus can be applied year-round to all your garden plants, including natives and bare-rooted roses. Retaining up to 70% of its own weight in moisture, Sea Mungus will help your plants resist frost, pests and disease, as well as conditioning the soil. And it's in pellet form for easy application. For more details, visit neutrog.com.au.
Shane from Drummond Golf is